and her absolute trust in a doctor.
Instead of directing either patients be taken by ambulance to Machakos Hospital or another, the nearer hospital, he decided to operate.
Now, almost 7 years later, the pain continues.
He came to theater drunk.
What happened with this matter?
Multiple government agencies and a never-ending wait for justice.
And that is a special feature that aired last night exclusively on KTN Weekend Prime. And here with us in studio now is Peter Munge, who is an expert in medical legal, and he is also the advocate and prosecutor of the particular case in Dr. Mercy Korir's feature. Many thanks for joining us in studio. And we've seen you in that feature there explaining quite a bit in terms of the procedure that those aggrieved can seek to get redress. But let's begin first of all with the history of cases of medical negligence in the country.
Good morning. And first of all, cases coming to the board every day. And as we're speaking currently, we don't have a case that is pre-2013. And if by the chance we have one which probably has come out of an appeal or something, could not be more than 3.
So it's pretty fast in expediting the cases.
It's pretty fast, and it's important for the general public to know that the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board is an effective board. In our judicial system, you hear of cases that have been there for 10 years,
right.
5 years, 20 years. That never happens in the medical board. But I believe it's all about leadership and how efficient you are.
How many cases has the board been able to solve?
I will not give you a number here as a seat, but it's more than 200 cases that have been resolved. And before 2013, going backwards, all cases are finalized. We are pretty fast, and we have a very rigorous process of evaluating cases and determining them as fast as they come.
All right, and so we've seen in that report by Dr. Mercy Korir, this particular case in which you are the advocate as well as the prosecutor, gives us a sneak peek into the procedure one has to take. But let's begin from the very start. In the case of a suspected negligence from a doctor, where does one begin?
From a suspected negligence, and not only negligence, could be dispute in respect of money. The other day, there's some papers that carried a story of how patients are handled. One lodges a complaint to the board in writing, and there's a form which you fill. However, the board also grabs such cases from the newspapers, from different media channels. And once we hear or get to know of our issue, the board immediately takes action. And the first steps is the board writes to the concerned practitioner or hospital and demands that the entire patient file, certified, a copy of it, be brought to the board. And it is analyzed. And that takes pretty fast. Within a month or two, a specialist within the board has analyzed the entire case and can confirm with a preliminary report whether indeed there was negligence
or not. And maybe just before we continue then, just to clear it up, what constitutes medical negligence?
Medical negligence is where the practitioner, either medical or dental, crosses the line and breaks the normal ethical issues or otherwise while treating a patient. Right. That constitutes negligence.
And what options then does a victim or those who are aggrieved, what options do they have?
The first thing is to pursue the complaint with the professional body, and the medical board is a professional body. And that is where it is proved really whether indeed there was negligence or not. Because many times, especially when there's a patient that dies, a lot of people think there's negligence. which is not the case. In a procedure or otherwise, there are many things that happen. Complications could occur, not because of negligence, but many people think immediately it's a death, it's negligence, which is not the case. But once you lodge your complaint, the board has a process that considers the issue to determine indeed, was there negligence, was there an ethical issue, was there overcharging, because it looks at the way bills are done by practitioners, and comes up with a decision. But also at times mediates. The times that two fighting parties over fees or something, and the board comes in to mediate, and parties are able to agree without going the full hog.
Of what could happen.
Yes.
What then would help in terms of building patient confidentiality, especially in terms of a doctor's track record, especially once a doctor has been accused of malpractice? I mean, I saw in the dailies a report saying that 1 out of every 10 doctors has been accused of malpractice. In that instance, what does the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board do? And is that track record availed to the patient well before any consultation?
I would first start by saying majority of the doctors are very professional. There's a lot of good doctors in this country who are doing a superb job, but they never get to be known, or that never gets out. It's only that small portion of practitioners where they get into a mess or a problem that get aired out. So it's important to appreciate that there are many good doctors in this country. And from the small portion of those that have issues, there are records with the board. Even if you go to the website of the medical board, you will see the number of cases, the doctors who have been involved in those cases. And when you look at their entire register, you'll appreciate it's not the numbers people talk about. It's a small margin.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, and you know, in terms of also just disciplining these doctors, what are some of the causes that the board has found lead to this kind of negligence? In this particular story, you're talking about a doctor who showed up to the delivery room drunk.
The main issue is communication. Communication is the one that causes a lot of complaints to come to the board. When a patient comes in, some doctors realize there's a risk involved, or there are issues that are involved, but don't come out to explain to the patient that, Madam or sir, there's a risk in this procedure. If you get in, or you are suffering 1, 2, 3, your pressure is high or something, there could be a risk. And when that is not explained and something happens, the first thing people think is there was negligence. So communication is crucial. And a lot of cases that come to the board, we go through the process and discover there was not really negligence per se, but the practitioner did not explain to the patient or the next of kin of the complications of such a process or otherwise. Number 2 is where young doctors get involved in an area not in their specialty. Is it either out of greed or trying to show the macho that they are able to do it? They get to an area where they ought to have referred the patient because that is not their specialty. So that also contributes. The third complaint that has good numbers is where patient complain of in terms of figures. They are overcharged. They think the hospital has overcharged them, and that brings in a lot of complaints, and we also try to arbitrate, even before we go through the whole hog. And when you go through the arbitrating that matter, we find most of them are resolved.
All right, let's talk about the redress that victims would get, especially when a case of negligence has been confirmed. Because if it is, for example, a case of a surgery gone wrong or an injection gone wrong, and we've seen this before, it's not enough to just have the doctor's license suspended. What do the patients get in terms of compensation, perhaps, in terms of free medical care, perhaps? What do they get?
It is important to draw the line, the jurisdiction and the powers of the board vis-a-vis that of other bodies. In terms of the board, its jurisdiction is to look at the profession and find was there negligence by the profession.
Right.
And once it determines, the next leeway is for the courts, because the medical board has no powers to order you be paid a certain amount of money. That jurisdiction is with the court. It's not with the board.
All right.
However, if you looked at a lot of our decisions as a board, we appreciate this clogging in our judicial system. And once we find there was negligence, we always encourage the party who is the complainant and the practitioner or the hospital or institution to mediate and try and reach a compromise for compensation. And a good number of them are able to agree on figures, and that avoid going to the next stage in terms of courts. In the event they don't agree, or in the event it involves a government hospital and now a county because health is devolved, you'll find they are not able to agree because of probably bureaucracies and the many issues in government and counties. The next option is once the board finds there was negligence, you then file a suit in court. When you go to court, there are two issues to prove. Number one is negligence. Number two is quantum. Once the professional body finds that there's negligence, the case in court in terms of negligence is good as done.
All right. So that is in terms of doctors who are registered with the board.
Yes.
But we've also had situations, and maybe as a medical legal expert, you'd be able to tell us better. We've had situations not very long ago, a student or a dropout of the University of Nairobi was arrested, and he was found having forged his certificates. Funny enough, there was not a single case of negligence from his patients, or at least a single allegation. But in terms of such doctors who masquerade as actual doctors registered with the KMPDU, what options does the victim have there?
Firstly, they are not doctors. They are not doctors.
They are the normal Mwananchi that does not know that. They see a white coat and they see a doctor.
So that's one of the things I believe the board has been trying to push, that in every institution within the country, there be badges with registration numbers, so that once a patient sees somebody with that white kabuti, you'll say, this is a clinical officer, this is a nurse, and able to differentiate, and that is a doctor. Now, there are instances where persons masquerade as doctors. So they are not doctors. They're people masquerading as doctors. That is a criminal offense.
Right.
And once that is done, the board comes in to assist the Director of Public Prosecution to charge them. There was a case not long ago of, I think, Buruburu, SOS. There was another one that happened of the famous man who was doing funny things in some clinics. And those are arrested and charged. And the process then takes in place where the law says they are prosecuted by the Director of Public Prosecution. But the law allows the Director of Public Prosecution to allow the board, if it deems fit, to prosecute on his behalf.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so let's focus on cases of malpractice. And I'd asked this earlier. Statistics say 1 out of every 10 doctors has been accused of malpractice. What is the procedure therein for the KMPDU in ensuring that these allegations of malpractice do not eventually end up into a fatal case?
Once there's malpractice, and I'll repeat, the complaints come to not the union, the board, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentist Board. Once the cases are lodged, a preliminary report is done once all the documents come to the board. If the documents don't come within 14 days, the board gives a notice, a 7 days further notice. If the documents don't come, to avoid any monkey business where somebody can destroy the file or otherwise, the board sends its officials to collect those files. Once they come and they are reviewed, a preliminary determination is done. And on which area of the complaint does it involve. And it either goes to what we call Preliminary Inquiry Committee, PIC, which is a committee of specialists of the board and also of myself, being an ex-official member and an advocate of the board, where we sit and we interrogate the matter. And we make a decision whether it's a case which can be determined without calling the witnesses, because some are very obvious. And those obvious, what we do, we write to the complainant and the practitioners and tell them this case can be determined without calling people to give evidence. Provide us this information and these statements, and the decisions are done.
Right.
In some instances, we call witnesses, and a decision they have had, just like in a court process. They come, give evidence, and then a determination is made.
All right. And initially you said that the first step is to move your complaint to the board. How accessible is the KMPDU board in this case?
Let's correct it. It's not KPMDU. That's a union.
All right.
It's Medical Practitioners and Dentist Board. And you can lodge a complaint anytime. The offices are on the junction of Leilani Road. Anyone can walk in and lodge a complaint.
What about cases outside Nairobi, outside in rural areas?
Outside Nairobi, you can write an email, you can access the website, print the complaint, the application for lodging a complaint, write the complaint, and whatever other documents, scan it back to the board. And we are very effective.
So it's very techy, I understand. I mean, there are regions where even scanning and getting to a website and downloading this isn't very easy. So would you say that KMPDU is hands-on in really curbing these cases across the country?
I think what the challenge we face is we have this board dealing with the entire country. The limitation of resources in the country, it serves 45 million Kenyans.
Right.
Okay. And that notwithstanding, with good leadership and good processes, we have no backlog of cases. And cases come from all over the country. They come from all over the country. However, one of the things that we do, we tried to benchmark with South Africa time back when we went, visited South Africa and saw how they do their things, and perfected looking at our situation. And we introduced something we call Professional Conduct Committee. And this is a committee that goes to the counties. And what that committee does is whenever complaints come from Kisumu, we put them together. And the board forms that committee and ensures it's chaired by the county director of medical county director of that county, or the CSC in charge of health in that county, and we have one professional from that area who practices in the area in issue, and members also from Nairobi, and the lawyers from Nairobi of the board, so that we have devolved that function. And we sit in the counties. We've sat in Bungoma, we've sat in Kisumu, we've sat in different places, and we devolve those functions that way. What the challenge we have is we don't have satellite offices in different counties. We only have the offices in Nairobi, and that's something I think the board will consider going forward.
One of the challenges definitely there. Yes. Let's focus a little bit before we wind up on cases of misdiagnosis. I don't know if that also constitutes a medical negligence, but there are times where instances where doctors have defended themselves in terms of equipment, saying that the equipment that they're using is not up to date. The diseases we're treating have evolved well beyond this equipment, so leading to cases of medical negligence or misdiagnosis, so to speak. What happens in such a case? Is this the doctor's fault? Is this the hospital's fault? I mean, doctors across the country are complaining of inadequate resources.
That happens. That happens. But you must draw the line. If you're a general practitioner and a patient comes suffering from cancer, of a situation that requires a neurosurgeon, and you are somewhere in Pokot or somewhere where you don't have the facility. The issue is you're supposed to refer the patients. And that's what ought to have happened in this Mwingi case. You don't have the facility in that place, refer that patient to a level 4 hospital that has the facility. And that happens all over. If you look at the Mwingi case, this patient had gone to a center, a clinic within the center. They did not have the facility. What did they do? They called the ambulance because the patient didn't have money. The ambulance came and picked the patient and took the patient to Mwingi District Hospital. It was a level 4 hospital at that time. That is what should happen. You refer the patient. You don't try to start a process when you know you have inadequate facility or you don't have the proper human resource or specialist with you to handle certain case. But if you try to do it and something happens, that is an ethical issue.
All right. And finally, as we wind up, maybe just to draw some comparison in your expertise from countries that have perfected, so to speak, or have a very seamless process in terms of identifying and dealing with these cases, how far does Kenya have to go?
I can tell you, I've visited several countries, and we've been in conferences with different other countries. And if you look at Africa, I think, apart from South Africa, we're doing very well. And a lot of countries are coming to benchmark with Kenya and see how we handle those cases. Most countries, their process is not proper. They have a huge backlog. And they wonder when they hear in Kenya, we don't have a backlog. They wonder when we hear we have devolved our services, we go to the counties. And they come to benchmark with us.
Right.
So in Kenyan terms, let's be proud of our country.
Right.
Let's be proud of our success.
Now, in terms of support as well from outside, what would you say you would need to make this a better, more seamless process?
I think we are doing well. I think we're doing well. The board and even the Ministry of Health, they are able to coordinate very well. Then the board and other boards, you have the nursing councils, we have the clinical officers council, and they're able to deal very well with each other. I think we're doing well. The main challenge is, like any other, is finances.
Right.
We have limited finances, and as a country, that is something we'll have to deal with. With time, we'll keep improving, and I think things will be better.
All right, thank you so much. Peter Munge is a medical legal expert. He's also an advocate of the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board. And this is where you can lodge your complaints in terms of any frustrations with regard to medical negligence in the country. Remember, this is a conversation that began last night with that special feature by our medical correspondent, Dr. Masi Korir. Do keep this conversation going on social media. Accountability in our health sector is important. Many thanks for watching Weekend Express.